With Group Ironman around the corner and everyone looking to start a new account, a question I see coming up a lot is, what are the best training methods for the other combat styles, and when is there a guide coming for those? Well, I'm working on them right now. The first one has been released actually, but it also made me realize something really strange. Something that might have sounded crazy at the time, but in hindsight, might actually not be all that bad. Kind of. What is that something? Well, for those who have been around before necromancy, the letters ED and the number 3 should ring a bell for you. Elite Dungeons 3, and more specific, the former XP farming that was related to it, known as ED3 trash runs. This insanely overpowered method got nerfed with the new combat XP rebalance introduced with necromancy, and quite honestly, a year later, that might have been a mistake. This mistake and many other things relating to combat XP rebalance is something we will discuss in this video. If you're going to enjoy it, consider leaving a like and subscribe if you're new. We're trying to get to 10k subscribers by the end of 2025. Enough waffling, my name's Chevalric, and let's talk about it. So for those who don't know what I'm talking about, let me get you up to speed. With the introduction of necromancy, the way experience gained from monsters worked was changed and reverted back to a more basic formula, similar to what we used to have back in the day, where for every point of damage dealt, you get 4 experience. This was then changed to a system where the monster's level, life points and other factors were considered, which caused some serious experience balancing issues, especially with ED3. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the new formula as we're not in maths class, but basically you now get 1 experience for every 20 damage done, and there are certain modifiers, for example to Slayer creatures, giving them more experience than other mobs of similar HP values. On paper, this makes a lot of sense. It makes it a lot easier for devs to balance certain monsters where HP and Slayer level requirements now dictate the amount of experience given to the player, instead of needing to take into account all sorts of factors like the monster's level, HP, stats and all sorts of other stuff. This is exactly what caused Elite Dungeons to be such good experience since its release, as the level of the Croissant warriors and other mobs were rather high, with high stats and low HP, making them quite fast to kill, but still giving insane amount of experience to the player. This made it so ED3 would net you roughly 1.5 million combat experience an hour. Now that isn't that much higher than certain methods now, as abyssal creatures could push those rates as well with the right setups. But that's pretty much where Jagex' issue came in when it came to ED3. Abyssal creatures have requirements, 85 Slayer or higher depending on the versions of abyssals you're slaying. ED3 could be accessed by a level 3 player and farmed by a level 3 player, making said level 3 player not a level 3 player rather quickly, as long as they had someone to tank these mobs. You could realistically get a 99 combat stat in a casual weekend of RuneScape. To complete the history of ED3, before getting into the reason of this video, these trash runs, as they were called, where you went up to the first agility obstacle in the dungeon, would also give you a lot of money, something they nerfed years after release, finally not making ED3 a one-stop shop for money and experience, which was a really good decision. So why am I making this video then? This does sound overpowered, and quite frankly, it kind of was. But there are 2 main aspects I haven't mentioned yet. One that everyone would probably agree with, and one that is a little bit more controversial. Let's start with the agreeable one first. Combat training early on now really sucks. If you're starting a fresh account in the year 2024, which you want to do combat on that is necromancy, you'd find yourself struggling to quickly get leveled up, as many of the early game methods are rather poor experience an hour and even supply heavy-ish. Now that isn't a bad thing by definition, but it is when you compare it to necromancy. Necromancy's rituals for good experience rates was designed to fast track people to PvM and to make PvM more accessible, which quite frankly they succeeded in and was a great update regardless of the balancing issues it had and to an extent still has. All the other styles don't have ritual alternatives. They are required to slay mobs and take a lot longer to get up to speed with necromancy. This kind of contradicts Jagex's vision of fast tracking people to PvM. Where ED3 used to speedrun you to high combat stats, which was a bit too much, training combat now is a lot slower and more of a crawl to the top than a speedrun for most people. And also, it has another issue. Regardless of ED3 being overpowered or not, you actually had to play the video game to do it. Instead of, here it comes guys, prepare yourselves for it, AFKing the game. Because why not reward people even more for not playing the game at all? For those who watch my videos regularly, you know my stances on AFK. If you are new, I think it's a cancer to our game. Don't get me wrong, it should for sure be a part of it and a viable method, but not the best method in the game, which in many situations it is or very close to. And even with combat, on paper, the most active style in the game or active skill, AFKing is the best way to train it. Do I think bosses need to be absolute best experience an hour? Not necessarily. I think they have been pretty decently balanced after the XP rework, giving you a lot of loot of course, but also some decent experience, but by no means the best experience in the game. However, the fact that the only active method of training combat was nerfed with ED3 and to an extent Shattered Worlds is quite funny to me, and even more so that it's considered to be a good thing. Now, could these trash runs have stayed in the game? I actually think so. They just needed to make a simple adjustment. An adjustment that could have also stopped all the bots years prior and has been mentioned over a million times. Adding a dungeoneering requirement. I'd argue that level 80 or 90 would have sufficed. This could have also made elite dungeons a viable training method for dungeoneering, as giving it decent dungeoneering experience rates would now actually make sense. Plus, having good combat experience for an active method would make training it a lot more entertaining than just AFK. Hell, even make it so that completing the full dungeon, including Ambi, would be the best training in the game. ED3 GP an hour sucks as it is really, so this wouldn't make it that much worse either if everyone started doing it. And yes, I'm aware that this won't fix early game leveling for new accounts, as 80 or 90 dungeoneering is a steep requirement. But I do think something more and healthier regarding a solution is actually required. Maybe buff some methods or make something like Shattered Worlds a viable training method for players again. Something active that isn't just setting up a revel bar and looking away for 50 minutes before you need to reset your game. So was the Elite Dungeons 3 nerf a good thing? Yes, it was overtuned at the time. But what we got in return for it, more AFK method, isn't the way to go. I'd rather go back to having a broken method in the game where you actually interact with the video game, even if it's completely brain dead, than introducing more ways to not play the game. And I'm sorry if I sound like a whiny piece of crap, but I seriously just enjoy playing RuneScape, and not having it up on my second monitor all the time. Yet again, that should be a viable way to play the game, AFKing, but not the best way to do so. Oh well. What a great thing about this game is all the ways you can make money. Check out the moneymaker on screen, let me know what you think in the comment section down below, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and my name's Chevalric, and I'll see you guys in my next video.